good afternoon. So this is going to be a video about our Gorean topic. Some people have said that I make too few of these videos. And today I wanted to tackle a question that is discussed again and again, both within Gorean lifestyle, but also in other power exchange lifestyles. That is the use of the word slave. Because a lot of people get their panties in a bunch over this. And it is a very negatively um, associated word, and I'm not going to make light of that. Slavery in history has done a lot of terrible, horrible, gruesome things, and of course we should respect that. However, a word can mean many things, and I know, for example, a very common argument against using the word slave for somebody in the Gorean lifestyle or other BDSM lifestyles is that, but the dictionary definition of slave is somebody who is owned. And yeah, that's one of the dictionary definitions of the word slave. It is somebody, a person who is actually owned. And but then is the question, who confer ownership? Basically, yes, of course, in consensual slavery, this isn't ownership that is sanctioned by the state. If the slave runs away, the police isn't going to come and hunt her down and drag her home. Because it isn't a state sanctioned ownership. Like, I own this bracelet. If somebody comes and takes it from me, I can call the police. Not that I will probably do something for a piece of custom jewelry, but you get the point. It is mine, I own it. And you don't have the same police protection. However, is that the only definition of ownership? Basically, I feel very much that within the confines of a total power exchange relationship, including a Gorean one, then the master do own the slave, though the ownership is limited to within that relationship. When the relationship ends or changes, the slave is no longer owned. However, as long as that ownership is there, it is there. The slave is being owned. And by that I mean, basically, I feel that the state isn't the only one that can define ownership. It can define what ownership will it protect. But I feel that ownership very much is what you claim. And unless then the sword of others stop you. As in, if you try to claim something that is protected by others, then you can define by yourself what you want to claim. And for a Gorean master, he claims the slave. So that is one way I feel that the dictionary version of a slave being somebody who is owned do still apply to a Gorean situation or the situation of another form of total power exchange relationship. Because within the confines of that relationship, the slave is owned. It is a bit like if you have kids, you will say the kid's toy, you give the kid a gift of a toy, and you say that they own that gift. The little Johnny owns his action figure, is little Johnny's action figure. But really, no, it doesn't. By the legal term, by what is protected by the legal term, the parents own that action figure. And little Johnny gets to use it at their discretion. It is a bit the same. I feel that a Gorean master owns his slave. but it is not an ownership that is sanctioned, so that if the slave would want to become free again, you can't legally stop her. Another thing is that there are more definitions of the word slave than just somebody who is owned and has no rights. For example, one of the definitions is somebody who's completely controlled by somebody else. And you definitely have that in very many total power exchange relationships, including a lot of foreign relationships, where that is the ideal for a master-slave relationship, to have somebody who is completely controlled by the master. And that is part of the Webster dictionary, is that it is that it also means somebody who is completely controlled by another person. Even if no actual legal ownership is taking place, if a person is completely under another's control, then the term slave do apply. And also remember that there is places where basically this dictionary area of slavery as somebody owned actually should apply, but where it isn't used because it's not what we think about. Basically, words change meaning very much with the context you put it in. Take football players. Now I'm thinking soccer. Possibly this is the same in other sports, but at least in soccer. Where basically a player is bought by another club, and sure, technically speaking, he or she could say no, but then they generally breach contract, and at best their career take a real hit. And at worst, they could be heavily fined for contract breach. So they really have no choice. They are owned by that club for as long as that contract lasts, and can be bought and sold by that club. And of course, that doesn't apply to their private life and so on, but within their career, they are actually bought and sold. And that would fit the dictionary definition of slavery, but you don't use the words there. And also with children, technically speaking, in very many ways to look at that pure dictionary version, it would apply. The child is completely under the rule of his or her parent. Of course, there are limits in the law as to what the parent can do with the child, but the parent decides the child's religion, decides what the child shall eat, decides when the child should sleep, and so on. And the parent can also basically give this authority to others. They can say, okay, grandpa, now you will be the boss here. Or can even give the child up, like within adoption and so on, to somebody else. But we don't use the term slave there, now do we? So basically, there's a lot of situations where that dictionary definition would fit, where it isn't used because it doesn't fit within the context. And in the same way, that distinct dictionary definition, there's a lot of situations where that doesn't fit, but the context still do. And therefore, I very much feel that somebody who is a slave within a Gorean or another form of total power exchange situation could definitely that be called a slave, because it in the context it fits. Now, in addition, I'm talking about context here. There's a lot of things that are called slave that is completely valid. For example, if you have two hard drives on your computer, one will be the main drive and be called the master drive, and the others will be called slave drives. Because, again, we have the topic, this one controls the lesser drives. And you have the same with, you have slave bracelets, which is basically a bracelet where you have a bracelet and then a chain and then a ring, that you have something bigger connected or controlling something smaller. You have this concept where it's used constantly. You have fashion slave, basically The word slave is used constantly about somebody being controlled by somebody or something, and therefore it is completely valid to use within the context of somebody being controlled by somebody else, even if they are not bound by law to be controlled by them. Another thing is that somebody says, and this is a bit of off topic, within those that are, for example, just playing, and they like to use slave to, or the word slave, to spice things up when they have their fun in bed. And that is valid too, because like I said, it's words are context based. And basically, it's like the dictionary definition is a slave is a person, a human being owned by another human being. So a hard drive wouldn't count in that, but it's still a valid word because that is what it's known as. And as such, when Ben and Alice decide to have a fun time with a bit of a whipping and a bit of kneeling and a bit of all of that, then if using the word slave makes it more hot for them, it's still worse because it's within the definition of what they're doing. They know what the word means to them, and as such, it is a valid use of the word. So, yeah, it's basically words are dynamic. They don't just have one definition, one use, and that's all they're used for. Let me take the example of fruits and vegetables. Technically speaking, bananas is a berry, cherries are a fruit, and tomatoes are a fruit. And I could go on. Because by the scientific definition of it, it has to do with how they grow on the plant and how the seeds are located and how many seeds there are. But really, what most people think about when they say tomato isn't this is a fruit. I think it's a vegetable. Because what most people sort it as is sweet plant thingies are fruit. Small sweet plant thingies are berries, and non-sweet plant thingies that you eat are vegetables. And as such, basically saying, oh, I'm going to go and pick up some vegetables, I have some carrots, some cucumber, and some tomatoes, that is completely valid. Because within the context that it is used, even if technically speaking, tomato is not a vegetable, everybody involved understands what you are talking about. Now, as for the historical context, I think that it definitely do not show disrespect for those that suffered through basically legal slavery, that it is that the word is used. Because it's not the word that was the problem, it was the practice. And basically, when somebody speaks of slavery in a TPE setting, what you're thinking, everybody that is involved there know that you're not thinking about slavery as happened in America or in Rome and so on. You're talking about consensual slavery within these contexts. And as such, using this word then doesn't it doesn't say anything negative or take light of the horrible history of slavery, because the word has another meaning when used in this context. So yes, of course, in most situations, you cannot say that somebody in the Gorean lifestyle is a slave within that one dictionary context. It does function in the other dictionary context, which is somebody completely controlled by somebody else. By that definition, yes, definitely, they are slaves. If you're going just for the concept of somebody legally owned, then no. However, as I have shown, slavery can be used, the word slave can be used to mean a lot of other things depending on how you look at it. And as such, I would say that definitely there is nothing wrong with using the term slave for somebody who identifies as a kachira or a kachirus within the Gorean lifestyle. So yeah, if you have any comments to this, please post them below. I love to discuss. I hope you all have a great, wonderful day. Then the phone is going off, so I'll be signing off now. And I wish you well.